Ice Storm 94, The Victims in the Valor, is brought to you in part by the King's Daughters Hospital, still growing after a century of serving, and Mississippi Power and Light.
It's almost impossible to imagine life as it was just 4 short weeks ago as Ice Storm 94 hit the Delta. Unsuspecting and unprotected, small communities are still today trying to recover from one of this area's most devastating disasters. Hi, I'm Mary Collins.
And I'm Ryan Andrews. In the next hour, we'll take a look at February 9th, the night the storm hit, telling you exactly what type of weather pattern caused this massive destruction.
We'll also tell you all about the restoration process throughout the Delta, and we'll hear from some of the many victims who are still today trying to recover. This plus will introduce you to the people that helped to pull our area through this crisis, the countless unsung heroes of the storm.
Let's start by taking you back to that stormy night of February 9th, a night not soon to be forgotten.
For as far as the eye could see, Mother Nature's cold snap touched down, destroying everything from power lines to trees, leaving 84,000 customers without power. It was a storm no one expected, a storm preceded by spring-like conditions just days before. On the morning of February 10th, residents from all over the Delta awoke to see just how unpredictable Mother Nature can be.
Well, I was here in '73 in the ice storm. In 1973, this one just boggles the imagination, really. This 73 was nothing compared to this one. Never seen anything like this. Some of the guys from Florida told me that Hurricane Andrews wouldn't even touch this.
I couldn't believe it. It's the worst ice storm I've been on a couple, and it's about the worst one I've seen.
It took hours to assess the damage, but officials knew instantly this was the most devastating ice storm ever to hit Mississippi. The storm produced ice accumulation so heavy that lines and poles snapped like toothpicks. Before it was over, thousands of crewmen were called in for repairs. In Mississippi, 576 miles of transmission lines were replaced and thousands of poles were put back in the ground. Other services like cable and telephone couldn't even begin their work until power was restored. Facilities that were built over years were literally rebuilt in days. A major blow to the state's power system wasn't the only result from Ice Storm 94. Pumping stations shut down and mile-long gas lines formed. Within hours, panic had set in and even the most abundant items became scarce. During the early hours of the storm, over 6,000 gallons of gas were pumped at this particular station on Highway 1. Those in line waited as long as 2 hours at the only station able to provide fuel for some very desperate travelers.
Out of gas, I'm from out of town, and this is the only station open.
It's very low, and then we was looking at that it's so cold, and we wanted to have enough gas to fill up so we can have enough gas, and we don't know what tomorrow gonna bring or tonight gonna bring.
Rushing to the aid of everyone in need were 955 electric power teams who served the Delta unselfishly until power was restored. Friends and neighbors also came to the aid of one another.
We see neighbors that are working together, and people helping people. We see them coming out of the city of Greenville, coming in to help us. So we are very proud of that part of it.
Bring us coffee and donuts, Cokes, anything we need, they're more than willing to bring it to us.
Very few preparations had been made for a winter storm of such magnitude, but crewmen assembled quickly and followed a well-organized plan of restoration.
Got the hospital. We have 2 major hospitals here. They have backup generating power, but it is limited. So we had to get them, get the hospitals. Next, we had to get the water wells on because it was without water. And next, we had to get the sewage pumps on. That's to get rid of the waste. And after that, we tried to get the businesses that we could.
Even 12 to 14-hour days didn't hamper the spirit of many.
In disaster like this, with utility people and MP&L, we realize that that's our duty, and we just catch a second wind and keep going. Well, I worked the '79 flood in Jackson, Mississippi with the power company, and I thought I had seen it all. but until I got here, this takes priority over it all.
And after going through Hurricane Andrew, this is probably 3 times, maybe 4 times as bad as the damage we had in South Louisiana caused by Hurricane Andrew.
Ice Storm 94 is the granddaddy of them all.
Reporting on Ice Storm 94, I'm Melissa Wesser.
Thanks, Melissa. So just what causes a storm of this magnitude, and how do we recognize another one before it strikes?
These are 2 questions we've been asked over and over again. Joining us now is meteorologist John James with an in-depth look at Ice Storm 94 before, during, and after.
The ice storm of 1994. What caused it? First, let's take a look at what causes any kind of ice storm. There's 2 ingredients needed, the first being a warm, moisture-laden upper atmosphere, and the second ingredient is a sub-freezing surface layer. Now, both those came into play the night of the night as a cold front brought cold surface air below freezing along through the delta, and it cut under a moisture-laden atmosphere with winds coming off the Gulf, very wet, warm air. Now, the clouds rose and condensed. Moisture fell out of those through the cold surface layer and onto freezing surfaces at the ground, such as telephone poles and trees. And we saw significant rainfall overnight, and that's what caused all the icing there, just freezing upon contact. Now we'll take a look at the large-scale weather features at 7 a.m. Wednesday morning before the icing really started. We have a low-pressure system in southern Texas giving Jackson southerly winds, a temperature very warm, 64 degrees at 7 a.m. in the morning, some scattered clouds, while up in Little Rock behind the cold front, 35 degrees, winds out of the north, and the moisture is being wrung out in the form of drizzle there. This is right about the hour that the cold front actually moved through Greenville, dropping our temperatures 18 degrees between the 6 and 7 a.m. hours. Now by the next day, Jackson to our south, temperature of 36 degrees, are also experiencing drizzle, and winds are continuing to bring in cold surface layer air from the north at 10 miles per hour. We can see we're north of that cold front, and by this time we've experienced considerable icing. We were on the air throughout the night that night, and the ice was so thick I couldn't get in my car for a half hour the next day. Now, frontal passage, as I said, was on Wednesday morning the 9th at 6:45. At 6 a.m., temperature of 69 degrees, 7 a.m., 51, a drop of 18 degrees. By 6 o'clock that night, 34 degrees was our temperature here at the station. By 10 p.m., 28, and significant icing. Normal rainfall for the month of February, 4.8 degrees, and the total rainfall on just the 48-hour period over the 9th, 10th, and 11th, 4¼ inches. Now here are the counties declared federal disaster areas. Most of northern Mississippi, southeastern Arkansas, and north central Louisiana were declared disaster areas. Heavy icing is indicated by the parallel lines, and the solid red line shows the ice rain line. Now we know portions of Moorhead didn't see some icing, portions of Greenwood were missed as well, but most of us were hit very hard by this storm. A real interesting meteorological event, something very significant that very rarely happens, a 100-year event at least. And it's something that I think most of us here in the Delta would rather read about than experience. That's a look at what happened, what caused the ice storm of 1994. We'll take it now back to Mary and Ryan.
Thanks, John. And when we return, from price gouging to burglaries, electrical explosions to agricultural devastation, we'll take a look at the spin-off tragedies associated with Ice Storm 94.
And we'll talk with officials from surrounding counties who tell us how our area could have better prepared for such a disaster. This and more when our look back at Ice Storm 94 continues.
Welcome back to our special look at Ice Storm 94. You know, Ryan, it almost seems unusual to see this back parking lot of the Greenville Mall half empty.
It sure does, considering just days ago power crews and their equipment and supplies filled this entire area as thousands of workers came to the Delta to aid in the restoration effort. Our NewsCenter 15, Stacy Case, takes a look back now at those people, who they were, and the amazing tasks they accomplished.
February 9th will be remembered by everyone as a very cold and dark night. That evening, around 9 o'clock, the Delta's worst winter storm swept through, bringing with it the ice that would in turn bring more than 3,000 power poles crashing to the ground. It was a disaster that called for more manpower than Mississippi Power and Light could muster. By the time daylight hit the next day, help was on the way. Power crews from Alabama, Kansas, Texas, and other neighboring states were in it for the long haul. When men who had worked for utility companies for years arrived, they were shocked at the destruction. No one could draw a comparison.
I worked Hurricane Andrew. It was nothing like this. This is the worst I've ever seen.
I've been in the Gulf State 17 years, and we went through Andrew year before last, and it wasn't near about this bad. And this is my first time ever seeing something like this.
The ice storm left more than 80,000 people in North Mississippi and eastern Arkansas without power. Soon one day became 1 week, but the crews kept chugging along, pulling the old splinter poles out of the ground and putting new ones in. They set up camp at various shopping center parking lots, mini warehouses they called them. The schedule was hectic. Get up early, go to bed late.
We're tired to work 16 hours a day, so we normally work 10 hours a day, but we work 16 when it's storm and trouble like that.
Immediately, the hard work started paying off as the lights began coming back on in communities all across the Delta. It was slow going in some parts, though, but for good reason. Power workers had to fix the distribution lines first, then the feeder lines.
Because we're restoring power in some areas each day. We must establish substations and then main feeder lines before we can really begin to working in the residential area that might tie on to a main feeder line.
When nearly 3,000 workers come to take care of storm victims, someone has to take care of them. Many crews had been driving to hotels an hour away just to get a few hours of sleep. That's when the Army Corps of Engineers brought in 3-quarter barges.
They don't have to travel 1-2 hours away from here to get a night's sleep and cleaned up and a good meal. So what we're doing is we're assisting them in their tremendous mission, and they have an awesome task in front of them.
Anything's better than sleeping on the ground. And you're out here working all day long, and a good night's sleep help you out in the next morning to really get started.
Once the ice melted, rain wasn't too far behind. Workers had a few nice sunny days in between, but they had just as many wet ones. Braving the elements was just part of the job and something that couldn't hold them up.
All hard work was definitely the case, but there was a little play here and there. Deltans were so glad to have their lights back on, they just wanted to say thank you, which they did in a number of ways. One night, the Las Vegas casino held a special dinner for the workers, and a few days later, they were treated to one of the Delta's finest cuisines, catfish. All of the workers were honored at a disaster crew appreciation celebration, where they got to watch Jerry Catawar sing and play.
It exemplifies pretty much everything that's been going on in the last couple of weeks. Your community is really, really supportive of all the crews that's been going on, supportive of all the work that's been going on here, and everyone's really patient and really just appreciative of everything that we've done. It makes us feel really good about what we do.
MPNL officials had originally thought their work would be complete the first week in March, but the job was finished way ahead of schedule. Just 2 weeks and 3 days later, it was mission accomplished, and it was time to say goodbye.
Thanks, Stacy. I'm standing now on the waterfront where the barge that housed those hundreds of workers was once docked. It's gone now, signaling a sign of normalcy returning to the Delta. And joining me now is the division manager for MPNL. It's Bob Grambling, and he was one of the key figures in helping to supervise this mass restoration effort. Bob, it's just a few weeks out of the storm. How are you feeling?
Feel much better. Weather's moderating. We still have a lot of work to do, though, Mary. A lot of lines to get out of fields, a lot of street lights to repair.
That'll continue for quite some time. Bob, a lot of people are probably wondering what was the total cost of this storm. Any idea?
Well, our bills are still coming in. We estimate the cost of the storm to be between $75 and $100 million at this time. The energy system will certainly go over that, but in Mississippi, between $75 and $100 million.
Okay. And can you tell me there's a lot of speculation as to what was the hardest hit area. Any idea as to what county?
3 counties stand out to me: Bolivar, Sunflower, and Washington counties. Certainly Coahoma, certainly the other surrounding counties, but it was a factor of how much rainfall you received during those freezing periods. Those 3 counties, though, I believe were hit the hardest.
Can you say that this is the worst ice storm that you've ever seen?
Certainly the worst that I've ever seen, certainly the worst that our system and our company has ever seen. It ranks in there nationally as one of the worst storms any utility has ever had.
Hopefully we'll never see anything like this again.
That's right. If we have a 100-year flood, described often, I hope that this is the 100-year ice storm, that I won't live to see the next one.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate your effort during the ice storm, and we appreciate you rejoining us here on this special recap of Ice Storm 94. Thanks so much. And we go to Ryan now, who's in Bolivar County. Ryan?
Thanks, Mary. I'm here with Kent Buckley. He's the director of the Bolivar County Emergency Operations and the man who helped organize the massive relief effort here in Bolivar County. Kent, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Kent, let's go back to the first day of the ice storm. As we just heard Bob Grambling mention, Bolivar County was one of the hardest areas hit. When did you first realize how bad things were here in Bolivar County?
Well, it took a little while because things got worse gradually from a period on Wednesday night all the way through Friday. As things started falling down, communications were breaking down. As soon as we'd get things back up and running again, it seems like they were coming down again. So it was kind of slow. It wasn't sudden like a tornado.
Okay, you suddenly found yourself faced with a massive reorganization of your entire county. How did you face that task?
Well, every county is supposed to have an emergency plan, and so we just put our plan into action, and we coordinated everything through the Emergency Operations Center, and of course we have 15 municipalities, which made it a little bit more difficult, but we were able to handle most of the requests. The problem was in trying to get the requests filled, because we were looking at 26 counties and some 358 generators through the Guard and another probably 60 or 70 through FEMA. So that's a lot of ask.
How do things look right now for Bolivar County?
Things are looking pretty good. We still have a lot of areas in the county, though, that are still without power in the rural areas, and it may be, a couple more weeks in some of those. We're still supplying some bottled drinking water.
Okay. Thanks again for joining us, Kent, and congratulations on a great effort here in Bolivar County. Now back to you, Mary.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm standing now at Greenville's National Guard Armory. At the time of the storm, this building was literally overflowing with activity. It's where hundreds came to volunteer their time and energy, and thousands reaped the benefit of a strong community. Karen Scullin takes us back now for a look at the many victims of Ice Storm 94.
No life was left untouched after the storm ripped a trail of destruction across the Mississippi Delta. Almost everyone became a victim.
We having to tote water in to flush our commodes, and we have no well water at our house. And then for cooking, we have to cook outside because we have nothing to cook inside with because it's not safe.
My mom ain't got no gas, lights, or boiler.
I think the people's getting very tired. They're getting emotional and restless.
And as time wore on and living in the dark became a way of life, what started out as an inconvenience soon took its toll and made daily situations next to impossible. Food had spoiled, people were cold, and tension was high.
They comes over here today with 50 vouchers. They know leading a population more than 50 people. I can't understand that.
We're not seeing any progress. We heard we have a generator here in town that will probably supply half the town or something of that nature, but so far no one has received any electricity. So the people are getting very impatient and getting kind of anxious because we're hearing so much, but not much is being done.
We're just coping with it the best that we can, but we just need to hear something from Delta Electric to let them know that, if they just let us know that they know that we out here and hadn't got no power.
Inexperience with items needed especially for the power outage, like space heaters, caused major problems and resulted in several fires. Lula Moten suffered second and third degree burns when her kerosene lamp overturned.
Since the ice storm, we had a bunch of fires, because of candles. I guess some people just careless.
Propane tank, especially hooked up during the power outage, left 5 Blaine residents in critical condition.
Range 2 told another deputy that they struck a match in the house, and that's what made the explosion from the boiler. The boiler was seeping gas.
When we got there on the scene, the whole house was engulfed in flames. Even the vehicle in the yard was engulfed in flames, and there was no need of trying to save the house, and we didn't have any water support, just only the water in the truck, so we just cooled down the gas propane tank that was outside of the house.
When Josephine Williams lost her house to a fire, she turned to the Washington County Emergency Shelter for help.
I woke up, I was coughing, me and my grandbabies, and when I looked over in the corner was a very big blade of fire, and a big of the room whole house that smoked up, and we couldn't get nothing out. We lost everything we had.
And many felt the future was very unpredictable. Gas stations soon became parking lots, with some storm victims willing to wait for hours to fill up.
I'm out of gas, I'm from out of town, and this is the only station open.
Hour and a half.
We wanted to have enough gas to fill up so we can have enough gas, and we don't know what tomorrow going to bring or tonight going to bring.
And for local businesses that were forced to keep their doors closed, loss of income created long-lasting problems.
Primarily has been the loss of income from being closed for a number of days and from their customers being so affected by the ice storm that they have lost business. An economic injury loan would help these small business owners with working capital expenses that they may have that will be ongoing, and their income has been reduced as a result of the ice storm, so therefore they would be able to get a low interest rate loan from the government.
But despite the stress and hardship the storm created, a big hand and a warm heart was what got many through the toughest of times.
We had gas hot water heaters. Our neighbors had electric. They couldn't get hot water. So they were taking baths at our house, and everybody was just trying to help each other out. Cutting chainsaws and everything else, pooling all our resources together, running generators together.
So we've been without power since last Wednesday night.
Wednesday's week, though.
And if it hadn't been for all the people pulling and helping one another, it would have been bad.
Oh, they'll never know how much we appreciate what they have done for us, and I just glad to know that there's still some good people in the world, and it's just unbelievable that they've done what they did. The Red Cross and Mr. Evans and Miss Sutton, it's just a miracle.
Although the negative was more than obvious, if nothing else, residents all across the Delta made new friendships and strengthened the old ones. Reporting on the victims of Ice Storm 94, I'm Karen Scullin.
Thanks, Karen. But as you can see, life's a little bit different now than it was several weeks ago. All of our Red Cross workers have been sent home. 99% of the Delta's power has been restored, and it's business as usual at Greenville's National Guard Armory, thus signaling more signs of normalcy returning to the Delta. Let's go back to Ryan in Bolivar County. Ryan?
Thanks, Mary. And while many signs of normalcy are returning to the Delta, experts say it could be years before we fully recover. When we return, I'll rejoin Mary in Greenville, where we'll take a look at those victims who are still suffering the effects of Ice Storm 94. Stay with us.
Ice Storm 94, The Victims and the Valor, is brought to you in part by Planters Bank, Our Roots Are in the Delta Where Your Future Can Grow, and Twin County Electric Power Association.
Welcome back to our look back at the devastating effects of Ice Storm 94, a time that kept everyone busy, especially local authorities and officials.
That's right. Not only were we dealing with the loss of power, water, and food, we were also faced with such heinous crimes as price gouging, burglaries, and looting.
And without heat and light, citizens were forced to use other means of electricity, thus creating safety hazards for many.
We look now at some of the spin-off tragedies associated with Ice Storm 94. During the first 24 hours of the ice storm, it was impossible to predict the crisis that lay ahead. But it wasn't long after the ice melted, the magnitude of this disaster was realized. As everyone soon discovered, living without electricity and the shortage of water would bring out the best in most and the worst in a few. The first sign of this was at the gas lines. Price gouging became a common occurrence as some local store owners began to take advantage of those in need.
I would usually come here and get $20 worth of gas and it'll fill my tank up. But I just got $20 worth. My tank barely is on half a tank. I think he wants like $1.40 per gallon, and that's just on regular unleaded.
The nights were by far the most difficult times for people in the Delta, and to make things worse, the dark streets left the door open for looters. Another example of a few preying on those most vulnerable.
The fact that we didn't have any lights and the alarm system couldn't work, we were an easy target for somebody to burglarize. So they've got some camcorders and VCRs, televisions, and stereos and stuff that you could carry out with your hands.
And this was just one of 21 burglaries during the first 5 days following the ice storm in Greenville alone. And there were those who went a step further. Police now know an arsonist is to blame for the fire that destroyed Larry's clothing store in Rosedale.
Smoke started boiling out so hard, and we could not even fight the fire without our self-contained breathing apparatus on. Firefighters came to get it on, and as we got in close to the fire, it was totally involved. We saw that there really wasn't any way in the world we were going to save that store. We started trying to put water on the building next to it, and also the service station on the other side.
The danger wasn't just confined to the streets at night. For most, living without electricity meant taking the risk that goes along with using gas to heat their home and cook their food.
We cooking on the gas stove and got a kerosene heater, and then we go to bed, we cut everything off, make sure the fire detector's on.
There's no doubt the stress from this crisis took its toll on everyone, but probably none more so than those with the job of helping others make it through the disaster. From police to fire crews, they worked around the clock. The only thing keeping them awake was their commitment.
The people, human beings are at their best when times are at their worst, and I really think that is true in this situation. I think there have been lots of evidence of that throughout this entire ordeal.
And it brought them more together as a unit. I saw them building each other's morale when they was getting low, and they just kept boosting each other.
For many, the days without power turned to weeks. But even when the outlook wasn't always good, the people of the Delta always seemed to make the best of it.
We've been here ever since it happened without generator till we got one Monday. But we operated with flashlights in the dark, and we're just trying to cope best we can.
Everyone is content. They want the lights to back on, but everything happened for a reason. And when the time for them to be back on, they're going to be back on. So they're going to like it, whether they like it or not, it's going to be that way.
Some good came out of this storm. I mean, it may look bad, but it's not all bad. Some good came out of it. That we came together. You know, there was unity. I even had guests in my home, and we shared, and we cared for one another, and it was beautiful.
In many ways, the Delta is recognized by its people. That being the case, maybe Ice Storm 94 didn't hurt us as bad as we thought. And you know, Mary, that's so true. Despite all of the tragedies associated with Ice Storm 94, it was still a time that brought thousands of people together as area residents pooled their energy to help one another through this very difficult time.
And it will remain a difficult time for quite a while as we continue to pick up the rubbish and debris that's scattered all throughout the Delta. But it's important that we stop and remember just how far we've come in such a short period of time. NewsCenter 15's Rosalind Murray takes a look now at the numerous cleanup efforts.
The freezing temperatures during Ice Storm 94 devastated almost every tree in cities that were affected by the ice storm. Limbs were severely broken in several places, and 10% of the Delta's trees have been declared a total loss. However, those affected the most were pecan growers. Experts have estimated that it's going to cost approximately $2,000 per acre to get the trees back in shape.
According to John Barnett, the president of the Pecan Growers Association, said it's going to cost at least $2,000 an acre to clean it up and do it right. So 40 acres, that'd be $80,000, and I don't know. We just haven't decided what we're going to do with it yet.
Because of a total loss, critics are predicting that growers won't see another productive season for at least 5 years. Besides diminishing pecan orchards, the ice storm also affected our reputation as a national tree city.
National recognition given to cities that understand the importance of having city trees, street trees, park trees, and see a reduction in your runoff. You have less load put on your drainage infrastructure. More groundwater is retained. It's better for the environment. They also clean the air.
Ironically, the port city was scheduled to celebrate Arbor Day the Friday after the storm hit, but little did we know we'd be spending the time learning how to salvage what was left of our devastated tree population, as our scenery went from this to this. As you travel through neighborhoods that were affected by the storm, you're sure to see piles and piles of tree limbs on every corner, but thanks to the Environmental Protection Agency, a solution is in store. The EPA has given the county special permission to burn the debris.
County Convention Center is open. The public can carry the limbs and trash out there for no charge, and they can dump them, and there's someone out there to show them where, to dump the trash when they bring it out.
While most municipalities are burning their limbs, the city of Hollandale is using another technique. Former Washington County Board of Supervisor Virgil Sandifer donated a landfill to the city free of charge.
I had the hole here, and I went to the mayor and the board of aldermen and told them I'd be happy to give them the hole to fill it up and but I didn't want anything in it but the trees.
For residents wanting to prune the trees, you must do it correctly, or you stand a chance of further damaging the tree.
It broke out like this. You want to cut it back to a lateral that's 1/3 diameter of the tree. Say a little limb like this right here, that might not be good enough because it could die out. You want to cut it back to a bigger lateral like this one right here.
If you're planning on painting the pruning cut to eliminate decay, the Mississippi Forestry Commission says it's not necessary. Reports show that this technique does not prevent insect damage or disease. However, if used, a thin layer is suggested. The mess that you see lying on the sidewalks and street corners is going to be there for a while. Mayor Frank Self says it's going to take months for them to get it all cleaned up.
The state would hopefully complete this within 6 months, but now that we're going to contract this out to various contractors, we're hoping to get it done within probably 3 to 4 months, and hopefully maybe even cut that shorter. We would look forward to that.
And to give a big thanks to all crews who have come to help out, Delta area residents have placed white ribbons on their doors as a symbol of appreciation. Reporting on cleanup efforts for Ice Storm 94, I'm Rosalind Murray.
Thanks, Rosalind. At NewsCenter 15, we know what it's like to fall victim to the storm, as we suffered right along with you.
That's right. Ice Storm 94 definitely took its toll on the media, knocking every local radio and television station off the air for at least 24 hours. One by one, stations are now getting back on their feet, but for some, it's going to take quite some time, as several towers were totally destroyed.
And we're fortunate that our tower, which stands in the heart of Valor County, is still standing. Our engineers say that there were over 250 tons of ice weighing on it for several days. And it's thanks to 2 generators that we were able to get back on the air as quickly as we did. But you know, Ryan, there are several stories like the one here at NewsCenter 15. And when we return, we'll tell you how we can all help ourselves financially to get through this disaster. Welcome back. We've worked our way to day 9 of the storm, February the 18th, a time when many local, state, and U.S. officials had all toured our area, seeing firsthand the amount of devastation caused by Ice Storm 94.
And it was on this day that their hard work paid off, as President Bill Clinton declared many areas of the Delta federal disasters. NewsCenter 15's Eric Austin has our story.
Governor Kirk Fordyce visited the Delta and other affected areas 4 days after the storm. He would have come sooner but was twice prevented by heavy fog. He toured a large portion of the area and then declared northern Mississippi a state disaster area.
I see as our biggest task reallocation of generators. We just came down here from Iuka, for instance. We were assured the National Guard Armory would be restored by this evening. That'll free up 3 generators. What we're going to have to do is shift all those assets around, and they may end up mostly coming to this area because this is going to be the slowest area to get back its full power.
The governor immediately requested over 200 National Guardsmen and put another group on active status. But all along, he said the strength of the Delta community was the most important aspect in overcoming the devastation.
And it always happens in any disaster in this state is the best in people. Mississippians come out, and the self-help and the assistance to one another is what really allows people to survive.
On Valentine's Day, U.S. Congressman Benny Thompson toured the area and spoke to a large number of people without power at the National Guard Armory. Like Fordyce, he pushed for a federal disaster declaration.
It provides low-interest loans, but it also will provide to the cities and counties additional funds for the cleanup. It also authorizes the use of other federal agencies agencies in the cleanup and get things back to normal. So there are significant resources that come with it.
The next day, U.S. Senator Trent Lott passed through the region along with 5 FEMA helicopters that assessed the damage. It had almost been a week since the storm, and people were getting worried, wondering whether a federal declaration would ever be made. Lott was hopeful, yet cautious.
We don't have, thank goodness, loss of lives, and we don't have widespread damage to homes, although there are homes that were damaged by limbs and businesses that sustained losses because they were shut down. But I do think that we certainly have enough justification for a federal disaster assistance just based on what I've seen.
Residents in southwest Arkansas were also looking for aid. That area was also declared a state disaster with preliminary damage estimates to public facilities at $9 million. Congressman Jay Dickey toured Dermont and McGee, and Governor Jim Guy Tucker pleaded to President Clinton for help. 2 days later, the federal declaration was signed, but it only applied to 7 Mississippi counties. Governor Fordyce hoped the other 19 counties would be added. By the end of the week, his wish came true, and southwest Arkansas also received federal aid. But the declaration still didn't provide money for individuals and businesses.
The public assistance doesn't mean for everybody in the public, it means for government entities. Individual assistance declaration has not been granted at this time, and I hate to say it, but it may not be.
FEMA explained that individual needs were being covered by volunteer organizations like the Red Cross and the Salvation Army. Still, U.S. Senator Thad Cochran said he'd do his best to help the private sector.
It seems to me that this is the kind of disaster that deserves all the full range of disaster benefits, including individual and business loans to help recover from uninsured damages that were sustained in this storm.
Frank Hunger with the U.S. Justice Department echoed Cochran's opinions.
You can't really appreciate the damage and the magnitude of it until you see it for yourself. So I'm just in hopes that as much aid and relief as possible can get on in here and people can get back to their normal everyday life.
Part of this damage is an estimated $1 billion loss to the timber industry. U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Mike Espy promised help through the Emergency Conservation Program. That, along with the Conservation Reserve Program, could provide low-interest loans to foresters and pecan growers.
Sit down and talk about it in the Midwest. What we did, we started out with a loan program with an interest rate of 6%, I believe, and I think we dropped to 2%, so that now it's at least 4%.
Local officials are also trying to help small business obtain loans. The Greenville Chamber of Commerce has already held a special meeting to determine how area merchants were affected by physical damage and lost business during the power outage. FEMA has already approved its first installment of federal assistance. Coahoma Electric Power Association has received $2.5 million to cover some of their expenditures. Still, there's no word on help for the businesses and individuals, but officials remain optimistic. Reporting on disaster assistance from Ice Storm 94, I'm Eric Austin.
Thanks, Eric. So while the storm has come and gone, the damage it's left behind will be visible throughout the Delta for quite some time.
Maybe when residents pass a pile of debris like this one, they'll stop and they'll remember February the 9th, and we'll all have a greater appreciation for the little things in life. The little things that we were maybe too busy to stop and appreciate before the storm. Little things like electricity, cable television, water, and other basics. NewsCenter 15's Emmett Russell takes a look now at life after the ice storm.
Just over a month later, and things are starting to get back to normal, but the memories of how the Delta was cut off from all modern conveniences is still fresh in everyone's mind. One of the first things to be restored was the Greenville Airport, but not before many passengers were grounded.
My company reserved some tickets, and nobody knew about the computers being down here, and what happened was I came out here to get my tickets, and I can't leave here. I understand that the tickets won't print on the computers because the computers are down, and so I can't fly out of here today.
The airport was forced to close down a few more times after the first plane took off later that day, but today the power is on and flights are moving as scheduled. If you couldn't leave town, you probably turned to your phone or TV to pass the time and found there was no help there either. Both phone and cable companies had to wait for power workers to finish repairs before they could begin restoring their systems. This made some subscribers a bit upset.
I guess I just have to listen to the radio. I'm not going to pay my bill until they adjust the account. Right now they say I owe $24.95 for 1 month, but until they adjust it, I'm not going to pay it.
And they didn't have to pay. All cable bills were adjusted for the time service was interrupted. Systems manager John Marshall says today things are pretty much back to normal, although a fallen tower is temporarily blocking transmissions from Channel 5 in Memphis. And things got worse before they got better with the phone situation.
The outside people that came in to help restore all the power to Greenville inadvertently during some of their digs to restore the power hit some of our fiber optic cables, and that, along with some of our other utility problems, caused the lines to be down for a short period of time. They're back up as far as I know right now.
South Central Bell workers have restored most of the city phone systems in the Delta and are currently working on outlying areas. They expect to have 100% restoration in the next couple of days. And as the lights came on, the schools began to open, and because of lost days, spring break is a little shorter this year.
I'll take the 5 days, and I'll use 2 of the days that we have a week out of spring break, but I'm going to take Thursday and Friday and use those as our teacher-student days. Then the Friday, the Good Friday, and the day following Easter, we'll use those 2 days. We also have built in our calendar a make-up day for our test. We use that as a day.
Surprisingly, this solution has met with the approval of most students.
I feel better about making up the days during the school year because we're seniors and we want to graduate on time.
I plan on going to summer school and getting a head start for my freshman year in school. So if we do end up going over into the summer, which I hope not, it would mess that up completely.
With the kids back in school, Deltons are beginning to look more closely at the damage to their homes, and more importantly, who's going to pay for it.
We had a couple of holes in the back part of the house and the roof. In the house here. In addition to that, we had a lot of damage to the trees and to the yard.
Under most plans, Mr. Tyndall's home would be covered. And if you have comprehensive insurance on your car, you should be able to receive compensation for any damage from fallen limbs. And there's another way to collect on those broken branches. You can use them as a tax deduction.
A real large tree, 42 inches, could in fact be worth $10,000 to $20,000 on a particular lot for real estate value.
Casualty losses can be filed on tax form 4684, but make sure you document the damaged areas.
At least take some photographs that would indicate where the stumps are, the sizes of the stump, so that you can get some idea of what size the tree was and the species.
A lot has been learned since the ice storm hit. From forms to FEMA, Deltons have found out who they can turn to and what they need when the ice gets a little thin. Reporting on life after Ice Storm 94, I'm Emmett Russell.
So whether it's the yellow fever epidemic of 1877, the flood of 1927, or the ice storm of 1994, one thing's for sure, the Delta will once again land on its feet, standing taller and prouder than it ever has before.
We hope you've enjoyed our look back at a time that's touched us all.